I'm Diego Cordovez.
Adam Schoenfeld.
Welcome to The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker. And we have a very affable young man named Tony Dunst, known online as Bond 18. And he has had tremendous success online, been a consistent winner. And this year in the main event, he had a deep run and finished 50th place. But he's also had other live
He's an excellent writer, which is amazing.
But on top of that, he's a guy who really is a stylish and thought-provoking writer and blogger, and he's traveled the world, and I think it's going to be very interesting to talk to him. So this year, when people made the money in the main event, you were actually the chip leader at that point.
I was at the time,
and
yes.
going into day 5, the next day, you're the chip leader of the entire tournament, which is a big deal. So at that point, it
was a bigger deal than I realized it was, because I always felt like, you know, each tournament, even the World Series main event, it's just like, all right, it's just another tournament, just go in there, try and make smart decisions, get it done, see what happens. And it had been a long time since I'd really, I guess, accumulated a stack in such a major event. And, you know, the comparison I always give people is like, if I go to bed and I check my Facebook and I wake up in the morning, maybe 1 or 2 people randomly add me. The night I went to bed chip leader, 43 people added me, you know, like I didn't quite grasp the scope of it till I came in the next morning and all the agents are approaching me in the hallways. And
it's the only tournament like that where even just being chip leader in one of the days is an event in itself. It's a news story in itself. So at that point, were you already allocating the $9 million and deciding what to wear to November 9, or were you able to still keep
Definitely
your
not.
focus?
I have a very, very long-term view of tournaments. As far as I felt, everyone made too big a deal out of it. You know, they're like, oh my God, you've got the chip lead in the main. And I'm like, it's day 4. Lots of crazy going to happen. As we saw the next day, I got massacred. And I've played enough tournaments in my day to know that don't get your hopes up, don't count your chickens before they hatch.
It didn't affect your play or your strategy?
No, but I'm willing to admit that there's a degree of pressure there that you're not normally used to.
The enormity of the moment hits you on day 4 or 5. I think this is for everyone. I think even former world champions, and it's just a matter of to what degree you can handle that.
Yes.
So you feel you handle that pretty well.
Yeah, it hit me harder than I did anticipate. I mean, what I really felt was just sort of a constant and steady adrenaline rush. I had a lot of trouble sleeping. I had very bad gut rot. I felt kind of jittery. You know, when I would interact with people socially for the last 3 or 4 days, I was kind of spacey and airheaded. You know, and I remember reading, you know, growing up, guys playing in the main event, going deep in it, saying, "Oh, I'm having trouble sleeping," and I'm like, get over it. It's just another event, man. Like, chill out. And then I went and did it. I was like, oh.
That's the hard part. I mean, having gone deep twice, it's the emotional exhaustion, the physical exhaustion. It's not so much the play, but by the later days, it's like you're just not 100%.
But you're referring to the late 70s. Last time you went deep.
Late 70s, Johnny Moss.
Right.
I read an article that you wrote that I thought was right on target for the main event particularly, which was about not giving people too much credit. A lot of people in big field events are not really thinking that much. And you warned about the dangers of even assuming they're thinking on a second level. Did this inform a lot of your play in the main event, or contribute?
Certainly
to
through the early stages, I really avoided high variance lines. I definitely, when I was on softer tables, you know, I would not triple barrel for value as thin. I would not bluff as frequently or in as large of pots in spots where I felt like, okay, I've got a soft table, taking this kind of risk is unnecessary. As the event went on this year, I felt that a lot of excellent players really rose through the ranks, so I became less risk averse as the days went on, because I realized, you know, if you want a shot at winning this thing, and I guess that is the dream of you know, being a poker player for a living, is making that main event. You know, you've got to play a style that's willing to take some shots at losing in order to win.
I like what you're saying, because when I watch the first few days of coverage, I'm stunned at some of the giant pots that I see being played, which I think is the absolute wrong way to approach days 1 through 3. But you ended up in some big pots, but from what I read, you were pretty sensible even in those situations.
Yeah, actually the day I got all the chips on day 4, I imagine most people would think, oh, you got the chip lead in the main event and it's that bubble day, you must have been lagging it up and making people's lives hell. No, some Euro dude got moved on my left and tried to bluff me in 2 gigantic pots, both of which times I had it. Actually, I didn't get to play that many hands that day, because after he won the first after he lost the first original massive pot, he wouldn't fold to me anymore. I needed to have showdown value, period, to play a hand.
He was determined to.
He was determined, and he lost almost all his chips doing it.
This was almost the ideal situation where it's personal for him.
Yeah.
You're still professional.
I'm still chilling.
And you had it.
Yeah, and I had it, exactly. That was ideal.
But still, there must have been some calls that weren't where you didn't have the nuts. I mean, you still had to make some tough calls, I'm sure.
On day 4, I pretty much had the nuts all day. Like, you know, this more thin things I did that day was like there was the hand against that opponent that I mentioned to you. I value bet him with like 4th pair on the river or something because he just wasn't willing to fold. But as far as having to make any big hero calls that day, nothing really came down to it at that time. Over the next couple of days, I was faced with a lot more difficult decisions.
Tony, I couldn't help but notice that you were wearing a suit during a lot of the main event.
Every day.
And
it's my thing.
It looked to be Prada. That's just from but I couldn't be sure.
Looked to be what?
Prada. But
no, close, you know.
So why do you do that? Because it's very unusual. And is it comfortable? Because that would be my main concern.
First and foremost, I believe it absolutely is comfortable because we never know what temperature is going to be in that room.
That's correct.
So I've got the jacket. If I need to bundle up, otherwise you can take it off, unbutton your shirt. It's convenient because I'm a pretty socially active guy. I like to go out, go to dinner, go to the clubs or whatever. Sometimes after I play, I don't want to have to run back home and get changed and everything. But above all, it's actually just the clothes I feel comfortable wearing on a daily level. I consider the way I am right now very dressed down. Usually if I leave my house to do something professional or even social, I'll throw the suit on. I mean, at the end of the day, I kind of grew up around my suits. My dad was a very stylish guy. I sort of grew up admiring, James Bond and the way he dressed, and I've been on, GQ and Esquire since I was in my early teens, which is definitely where some of the writing instinct came from as well. But, I mean, really, I just thought I feel comfortable in it, in those clothes. There are some guys in poker that dress in a very eccentric manner, and even though the way I dress is more appropriate from a business or professional standpoint, it's still rather eccentric to show up in a suit every single day.
It's unusual for poker, for sure.
Absolutely.
Most poker players may not even own a suit, and a lot of them maybe
I'm the guy who takes them suit shopping.
Specifically because they want to never have to wear a suit.
Right.
This is the motivation for a lot of people, and literally or at least metaphorically.
If Tony feels dressed down today, you're like a semi-homeless.
And I dressed up.
Yeah, right. Ironically,
that's right. There's a great dumpster bag.
I mean, I think the key to that is that you feel comfortable in that.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's positive EV in the sense that it gets you attention, but you're not making a fool of yourself like other people who are trying to get attention wearing
I will say
a clown suit.
On that subject, I mean, that's precisely what I did on day 7. I really kind of made a show of it, and it was not something that was premeditated. I didn't, say to myself, I'm going to say the following goofy things on the table, and then I'm going to go hit on that girl and this and that in the audience. But as soon as I saw those opportunities in front of me, I said, well, listen, if you have a naturally extroverted personality within poker, then there is certainly some serious off-the-felt equity there if you're willing to stand out and be a little bit eccentric on the table. Where I draw the line is being respectful to your opponents, because a lot of the guys that we think about being huge personalities in poker, Mike Mattisau, Phil Hellmuth, whoever else, can have an irksome table, Yeah, exactly. And I thought, I'm willing to play the fool a little bit. I'm willing to be silly on camera. That's fine by me, but I'm not willing to disrespect my opponents.
But also I think the key is that you're aware of the impact that you're having. You're aware of the possible ancillary value in terms of marketing.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, you're true to yourself. You're not playing a character that is not true to who you really are.
No.
I'm a
weird
from meeting you here, you enjoy interacting with people, you enjoy dressing a certain way, you enjoy looking a certain way, and that's who you are. As opposed to, and we've talked about this many times, there are people that they're so desperate for some attention or for some marketing result that they're inhabiting a character that doesn't even bear any relationship to who they are.
Absolutely.
And that comes across so clearly if you're not being honest to your true self.
Especially within poker, because we're looking people up and down all day.
Right.
We get very practiced at who's being genuine and who's not. But I'll say this, there are some guys in the industry who have vastly different styles from myself. Chad Batista comes to mind if you guys are familiar.
Oh, yes.
There's a guy whose style has caught some serious criticism. But I'll say this.
You do know, Lil Hold'em.
Lil Hold'em.
Well, I've played with him online, but what's his...
he'll have a grill.
He'll have a grill, giant jersey, blinged out, and he's like a 5'0" white dude, talks very urban and everything.
But you know what? That is honest to who he is.
That's exactly right. I had him over. I used to be a very harsh critic of Chad. These days, we're fairly tight, and I've got predominantly really good things to say about him. Occasionally he loses his mind in the chat. This is true. But he hasn't done that for a long time. But there's a guy who dresses very eccentric and, does not fit a professional mode at all. But on the same idea, he's being very much true to himself.
If that was someone acting, playing a character, it would be offensive. But
it would.
It's not, because that is who he is.
Yeah.
I agree with
It
that.
would be mocking. Thanks for joining us on The Scoop, brought to you by Full Tilt Poker and Tony Dunst, has proven to be a delightful guest. We can barely contain him.
Right.
So naturally, we're going to have him back for part 2 next week on Card Player TV.